It's my honor to introduce our speaker, Ellyn Craine Davidson, today. She's a graduate of the University of Wisconsin at Madison, where she received a degree in marketing and operations management and an international business specialization from the London School of Economics. She is a managing partner at Brogan & Partners in Birmingham, Michigan, where she has worked since 1994, bringing her talents, experience, and expertise together to focus on strategy, business development, morale, and technology. She has multiple honors for her dedication to her community, including being recognized in 2013 as a rare everyday hero by Winning Futures, and most recently being recognized as an esteemed woman of Michigan by the Dr. Gary Bernstein Health Clinic. Ellyn is now president of the Michigan Amber Alert Foundation Board, on the board of Winning Futures, and the marketing committee for the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, as well as being involved in many other committees and annual events in her community. She's currently the national board president of FORCE, which stands for Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered. When Ellyn was 36 and the mother of a toddler, a kindergartner and a second grader, and an account director at Brogan & Partners, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now an 8-year survivor, Ellyn has raised more than $750,000 to fight breast cancer while fighting for her own life. She has inspired and continues to inspire women to fight for their lives, both personally and professionally. Please welcome Ellyn Craine Davidson.
So August 2nd, 2007 started off like any other day in my life. I was busy with my 3 kids, my career, and a house. Lacey, my oldest, was 7, Brett was 5, and my youngest had just celebrated his first birthday. I sent my big kids to camp that day, and Seth went to daycare. In between, I squeezed in a few hours of work and planned my schedule for the next day. I'm a planner, and I always have been a planner, but I didn't plan for that phone call at 9 o'clock that evening. Those 3 little words, "You have cancer," that would change my life forever. I'd found a small lump 6 months earlier, but nobody was concerned about that lump. I was 36 years old, I was healthy, I had no family history, not my mom, not my aunt, not my grandmother, my cousin. Nobody had cancer in my family. And I was healthy and active. But still, I went to my OBGYN, and he wasn't concerned at all, but still wanted to send me for a mammogram and an ultrasound. He didn't want to be that doctor. So I went for a mammogram and an ultrasound, and again, they didn't see anything. They weren't concerned, sort of dismissed it. My doctor wanted to see me back again if the lump was still there. And even the surgeon was not at all concerned. But I ultimately had that lump out in late July, and on August 2nd, I got that phone call. My plans for the next day quickly changed. I had plans to take my little one to the park with some friends. Instead, I met with an oncologist, had a bone scan, a chest x-ray, and blood work. I was officially a breast cancer patient, entering that foreign territory that's very familiar to lots of women. It was a world I would get to know intimately over the next 9 months as I met with doctors, had a bilateral mastectomy, had a lymphectomy, 6 rounds of chemotherapy, breast reconstruction, and a hysterectomy. But one appointment was critical to my journey in 2007 and my journey over the past 8.5 years. I was familiar with BRCA. Again, this was 8 years ago, long before Angelina Jolie and many of the other celebrities that have come forward to talk about BRCA mutations. So I sort of knew what it was, but again, nobody thought I was at risk. There was no cancer in my family, except for 2 cousins of my dad's. They had both been diagnosed with cancer at some point, one breast, one ovarian. They were both smokers. One was overweight, and they were much older than when they were diagnosed. So I just couldn't even imagine that there could be any connection between my cancer and their cancers. Well, the night before my genetic testing, Judy, one of the cousins, called. And I mentioned my plans for the next day, told her what I was going to do, that I was going for genetic counseling and testing. And she said to me, and I'll never forget this, "Oh yeah, I have that thing, and so does Dina." That thing was a BRCA2 mutation. And it was at that moment that I was pretty certain that I too had that thing. And I did. When I went for my test results, I learned about FORCE, Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered, which you've heard a bit about today. As soon as I got home, I was all over the computer taking a look at what FORCE does. I learned that they were the only national nonprofit organization focused on hereditary breast and ovarian cancer and making the lives of people with a hereditary predisposition to cancer better. I didn't feel I needed tons of support, which was a lot of what they were providing, but I did think that perhaps I could help other people. I had the most amazing family, friends, coworkers, tons of people there to support me. I'd already connected to women that had gone down the cancer path, some that had a BRCA mutation, so I felt pretty comfortable with myself, but I really thought this was an opportunity for me to get back. I emailed the executive director, a wonderful woman named Sue Friedman, and I got a response immediately. There wasn't an outreach group in Detroit or anywhere in Southeast Michigan. Would I be interested in starting one? Within days, I was officially the outreach coordinator for Southeast Michigan for FORCE. My job was to support women, to raise awareness, to help raise money. I was all in. I was very excited to do this. I had cancer, and along with it, I had a brand new mission. 8 months later, I was done with my 6 rounds of chemotherapy and my 3 surgeries. I had newly reconstructed breasts, no ovaries, no uterus or fallopian tubes, but I felt great. I was ready to make a difference and to really help other women and families and start to raise awareness of this genetic mutation. So in June of 2008, we had our first meeting at Royal Oak Beaumont Hospital in Detroit, in Royal Oak, where I was treated. It was a great success with over 20 people eager to share their stories and meet other women. Some of us were survivors, some people had the genes, some people were in the midst of treatment, but what we all had in common was this need to connect with other people and to talk about what the BRCA mutation really meant to us. Each month, over the past 8 years, this group continues to meet with the support of the genetics counselors at Beaumont Hospital. I don't make it to every meeting, but when I'm there, I leave so inspired and knowing that we have helped another woman get through a difficult time in her life. I was so proud to be a part of this organization. And while I was doing just a small part in Southeast Michigan, FORCE was having a much greater impact on hereditary cancer, somewhat quietly. Last year, when I went for my yearly visit with my oncologist, we were talking about BRCA, and he was telling me about a new drug that was treating some of his patients with advanced ovarian cancer. He talked about it with such enthusiasm. One of his patients went on a cruise and took her pills with her and was able to enjoy life. And there was so much meaning there, and I said, wow, it's almost better to have a BRCA mutation if you have cancer. And he said, we just talked about how much advancement was happening in this field and what was going on. And I said, that is really music to my ears. I have a 15-year-old daughter. She's now 16. At the time she was 15. When I was diagnosed, she was only 7. I was thinking about her, but I really wasn't thinking about her future. But now I'm really thinking about her future and what a BRCA mutation could mean to her. And he turned around and he said to me, your daughter will never go through what you went through. And those were the most powerful words. I got in the car, I couldn't wait to call my parents and tell them that the progress is being made on BRCA mutation and that people are out there working and fighting to make a difference in the lives of men and women with hereditary cancer. And I can't tell you what this meant to me. So it was soon after that Sue Friedman ironically called me and asked if I would join her board of directors. I jumped at the opportunity. It was a no-brainer for me. Within a few months, I also took on the role of board president, and I cannot tell you what an honor and a pleasure it is to serve in that capacity of this organization that is doing so much in the fight against hereditary breast and ovarian cancer. So I know that you were excited to hear my story, but I want to also provide you with some basic information today, and that's really what I'm here to share with you. So we're going to get going. I'm going to talk today about what you need to know about the BRCA mutation. I'm going to go on to tell you why you need to know about the BRCA mutation and why it's important. And then I'm going to share with you how FORCE is making a difference nationally for hereditary breast and ovarian cancer. So let's set the stage first before I begin with a very staggering fact. And this fact talks about more than just a BRCA mutation because there are other cancer-causing mutations out there. But 90% of people with a hereditary predisposition to cancer are unaware of their risk. That is why raising awareness is so important. 90% of people are walking around with a predisposition to cancer that they could know about, and they don't know about it. So let's go on. First of all, what is a BRCA mutation? So a lot of times I'll hear people say, I have the BRCA gene. Everybody has a BRCA gene. We're all born with BRCA1, we're born with BRCA2, we all have those genes. The problem comes in is when you have a mutation in those genes, because those genes are designed to emit a protein that repairs DNA damage. And as you know, we all go through life having damage to our DNA. If those BRCA genes are not working properly, they're not able to emit this protein that will then repair that damage, which is why people ultimately get cancer. So what does that mean for your cancer risk? So, and I was talking to someone today about what the different mutations mean, whether it's BRCA1, BRCA2, and how it changes your risk. And there are variations in terms of your cancer risk for each of these genes. But generally, what I wanted to share, and these are the two most common, breast cancer in the general population, 1 in 8, everybody knows that number. It's been drilled into us for our entire lifetime. So 12.5%. With a BRCA mutation, that risk goes from anywhere to 40 to 85%, lifetime risk of breast cancer. Ovarian cancer in the general population at a 1.4% risk. In the BRCA population, anywhere from a 10 to 50% risk. So you will see, and I told someone this today, when you see ovarian cancer, it is even more of a red flag for a BRCA mutation than breast cancer, because only about 5 to 7% of breast cancers are caused by a mutation versus closer to 20% with ovarian cancer. So important things to know and understand, and I'm going to talk in a minute about the different risk factors and what to do and who should get tested. But before I move off of this slide, a few other cancers that are very important for people to know about. Male breast cancer. So in the general population, it's a 0.001% risk, which means that about 1 in 1,000 men in the general population will get male breast cancer. That goes up anywhere from 1% to 10% in the BRCA population. So anywhere from 1 to 100 to 10 to 100 men. So should men get tested for a BRCA mutation? Absolutely. Should they be having some form of clinical breast exams and paying attention to any changes in their breasts? Absolutely, because they do get breast cancer. Prostate cancer is another one we've heard about. When you're a man, you're at risk for prostate cancer. It's about 15% of the general population, even higher than breast cancer over the course of your lifetime. Slightly elevated risk for BRCA2 mutation for prostate cancer. Melanoma, your risk also increases for melanoma, as well as pancreatic cancer for a BRCA2 mutation. So even though the most common cancers are breast and ovarian, there's still other cancers to be screened for and to be aware of. So moving on, if you're sitting in the room thinking about your friends, your family, people you've met, let's talk about who's at risk and who should get tested. So if you or a family member has had ovarian or fallopian tube cancer at any age, breast cancer at age 50 or younger, more than one breast cancer diagnosis, so that's one person having multiple breast cancer diagnoses, both breast and ovarian cancer, triple negative breast cancer, and if you're of Eastern European, Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry, and have a history of breast or ovarian cancer. Now this is interesting too, because I think one of the myths out there is that this is truly just a Jewish genetic mutation, and it really isn't. Anywhere from 1 to 400 to 1 to 800 in the general population will have a BRCA mutation. So you see this, it crosses every ethnicity, every religion, every race. It's prevalent throughout many populations. It just so happens that 1 in 40 in the Jewish population will have a mutation. So we have a disproportionate risk overall. If more than one family member on the same side of your family has had any cancers, any of these cancers, breast cancer, ovarian or fallopian tube cancer, prostate cancer, or pancreatic cancer. So again, understanding if there's multiple family members on the same side of the family with any of these cancers, it's important to get tested. And so if you're sitting in this room thinking you should get tested, or your daughter or your friend or somebody you met last week should get tested, I want to make sure that you understand the importance of seeing a certified genetic counselor for your testing. It's very, very important. They live and breathe this. They are skilled in understanding what genetic mutations mean. They take the time to learn about your family history. They take the time to help you understand what to do next. They know which mutations are cancer-causing. Many hospitals, and I know even the Jewish Genetic Center here, has some counselors available to talk to if you're concerned about your risk. So why is it important to know if you have a BRCA mutation? Again, I hear people all the time say, I'll just deal with it. I'm scared. I don't want to know. If I get cancer, I'll get treated. It's okay. Here are 4 reasons you need to know. This is Suzanne. This is Lori, Shannon, and Amy. All 4 of these women had a BRCA mutation. All 4 learned of their mutations after their diagnosis, and all 4 of them lost their lives leaving husbands, children, parents, friends devastated. These are just 4 women. There are so many more out there. What you need to know is that BRCA mutations not only cause cancer at an increased rate, they strike younger and they are more aggressive. We need to work towards a cure, but until we do, we need to know if women or men have a BRCA mutation so that we can either properly screen or send them in the right direction for therapies or surgeries that will eliminate their risk. It's so important. So, given that, and I talked earlier about the great work that FORCE is doing, and I'm here representing that great work today because, again, I'm so proud to be part of this organization. So what does FORCE do? They really have 4 major categories, and I'm not going to talk too much about the first 2, which are support, education, and awareness. I'm kind of going to breeze through those. What I mentioned is when I first found FORCE, and when FORCE was first founded by Sue Friedman, it was out of a desire to help people. Sue was very much alone. She didn't know anyone that had a BRCA mutation, and she had to deal with this on her own. And she never wanted anybody to go through that again. So FORCE was founded as a support group. It was with outreach groups all over the country, 1-800 number, message boards, all kinds of resources, now a robust social media platform, really where women and men can connect and can talk and can find out what are their best options and really support women. The next part is awareness and education. And again, they've done a great job of creating the awareness and education, but there's still a lot of work to do. Every 8 months, they have a conference with some of the leading doctors from cancer centers like MD Anderson, Dana-Farber, and others presenting the latest and greatest information in hereditary cancer. One of their newest programs, which I encourage everybody to check out, is called X-Rays. So we're all familiar, we read in the news, we don't know what to believe. There's so much news out there, it's sensationalized, we don't always understand it, and we don't know what it means for us. What X-Rays does is it unconfuses the news. It is a weekly publication that takes one particular subject in the news and boils it down so that everybody can understand what that means. And it shows you the most relevant sources in the media to point to. So it's a great resource if you have questions and are concerned about something you've read in the news and the implications it has for you. The other piece is that whenever there's something in the media, for example, Angelina Jolie or others, the media does turn to FORCE for people to share their stories and to help provide expert information. So that's another key role. But what I really want to focus on, and I guess what I'm most excited about, because it really is going to impact the future of my children and the future of all of your children, is the work that FORCE is doing in advocacy and in research. So I'm going to share 4 areas with you. So the first one, we talked a little bit about this last night, if anybody was there, is Myriad Genetics. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that, but they are the ones who were originally providing genetic testing for BRCA mutation. And this test cost about $3,500, and insurance would pay for it, but they weren't always so willing to pay for it. So FORCE, along with many other organizations and the ACLU, joined together to fight their patent. And they ultimately won, eliminating Myriad's patent. So now genetic testing is available through many other labs, costing anywhere from $200 to $500 versus the $3,500 it once cost. So if somebody can't get insurance to cover it and just wants to be tested, it's now affordable and they can be tested. This was a big, huge win. It went on for many, many years, and I'm happy to say it's over. The next one is GINA, and some of you may be familiar with GINA, but it's also important to know GINA doesn't just impact the hereditary cancer community, it impacts anybody with a genetic predisposition to a disease. So a big fear from people, and this was an earlier fear, was if I find out I have a BRCA mutation, I may not get to get health insurance. Or what if my employer fires me because I have a BRCA mutation? That's a legitimate fear that people once had. But now with GINA, we are protected. So the GINA is the Genetics Information Non-Discrimination Act. A coalition worked for about 13 years getting GINA passed. Force joined on for the last 9 years of that, and that's been in place for a long time, but it's really, really important in protecting all of our rights as people who have a genetic mutation. So the third part is the Early Act, and I showed you those 4 young women who lost their lives far too early. The Early Act is an act, not a law, but it is designed to educate not just women, but physicians about early breast cancer. So as everybody has heard from the time we were younger, if you're a woman 40 or older, you may be at risk. But guess what? 30-year-olds, I just talked to someone whose sister was 25 when she was diagnosed. A BRCA mutation strikes early. So having an education and informational campaign in place that tells women of their risk is crucial and critical. And Force was a big part in helping to pass the Early Act. And the fourth one that I want to talk about today, when I mentioned my oncologist, the drug that he was referring to is a drug called Lynparza. And Lynparza is what's known as a PARP inhibitor. These are revolutionary drugs that are treating cancers. They're treating a lot of different cancers, but they're doing a phenomenal job treating BRCA cancers. The great thing about PARPs is they have almost no side effects, very limited side effects, and they're working. The issue with PARP inhibitors is having enough people willing to fight and willing to get this passed. So one of the major roles that Force played was they were the only nonprofit organization that was talking to the FDA and telling the FDA that this drug had to go to market, that it was working for their community and it needed to go to market. So they were incredibly instrumental in getting the FDA to approve this drug, which is now available to all women, not just in clinical trials. All women with ovarian cancer. Very exciting. Speaking of clinical trials, another critical role that Force plays is in helping to fill clinical trials for people affected with cancer in the BRCA community. Pharmaceutical companies want to know that when they are putting clinical trials out there, they can fill those seats with patients. It's incredibly important. So Force works very closely with these pharmaceutical companies and helps them feel confident and comfortable that they will fill these trials, which motivates them to put these trials into play and to get them into the community so that ultimately, just like Lynparza, they can be passed. And finally, Force has a relatively new research network called the About Network. And the About Network is a patient-powered network that is ultimately going to connect medical records for 70 million Americans. And what it's going to do specifically for the BRCA community is help us have a better understanding of what diagnostics, what treatments, and what protocols are going to work best for this community. So there is great work being done, and these are just a few of the highlights that I wanted to share. From the advocacy to the research, they're making a difference. As we wrap up today, my hope is that each person in this room is walking away knowing a little bit more about BRCA and hereditary cancer. My hope is that you will take this new knowledge, you will share it with a friend, with a loved one, or again with an acquaintance. And my hope is that together we can save lives.
Wow. Talk about taking lemons and making a huge batch of lemonade. Ellyn, you win the grand prize. You know, the field of human genetics is absolutely exploding. And it's our job here at the Jewish Genetic Centers of Greater Phoenix to become aware of that knowledge and to work with the community to get that knowledge to you. If you have questions, if you want a referral to a genetic counselor about cancer genetics or any other genetic issue, please contact us. We have certified genetic counselors that we work with, and we can point you in the right direction. Besides our involvement in education and awareness about breast cancer, our major activity is providing pre-pregnancy genetic screening to couples so that they find out if they are at risk of having a child with a hereditary disease that can be devastating and fatal. And I want to introduce you to a young man in a moment. This center was started in our living room. We had a meeting a number of years ago, and two people came to talk to us. One was Becca Hornstein, who at that time was the director of the Council for Jews with Special Needs. She has since blissfully retired, and we miss her tremendously. And the other was a young woman named Jen Schwartz. And Jen is here. Jen, would you stand up a minute? There she is. Jen's husband, Steve, by the way, is president of the Jewish Federation, which supports us and deserves your support. Anyway, Jen introduced us to a young man who was a cousin of hers, Jacob Sontag. Jacob had Canavan disease. Jacob never really had a good day in his life. This is Jacob as a young boy, and now I want to show you Jacob a little bit later. Whoops. This is Jacob. Fairly recently, he has twin siblings. Jacob died last month, and today would have been his 20th birthday. Jacob has been an inspiration to us because no child should live the kind of life that Jacob had to live with this devastating disease, and no parent should watch a child suffer and die at an early age. So it's with Jacob in mind and with Ellyn and all that she does that it is my pleasure to introduce to you Susan Silver, who has also chaired this luncheon, is a member of our board and the chair of our Life and Legacy Committee, and she has some remarks for you.
I think I need to lower this a little. Thank you, Andy and Jen, for sharing Jacob's story with us. Thank you, Ellyn, for your inspiring story and for being such a role model for women everywhere, truly. As Andy said, I'm Susan Silver. It is truly both my honor and privilege to be on the board of directors for the Jewish Genetic Diseases Center of Greater Phoenix. I'm so proud to be a part of this incredible organization that Sherman and Andy created just over 10 years ago. Sitting here today and watching Michelle's makeover reminds me of a conversation I had with my 12-year-old son, Evan. We sometimes like to watch American Idol together, and on more than one occasion, he has mentioned to me how beautiful he thinks Jennifer Lopez is. I've told him I agree, but I'm very quick to point out that she receives a lot of help from makeup and hair people, and that she really puts a lot of effort into her appearance. But she's a celebrity. She's in the spotlight, and that's kind of part of the job. If you're going to be a parent, there are responsibilities that go with that job. And specifically as a Jewish parent, getting screened is one of those primary responsibilities. 16 years ago, before I got pregnant, I was screened for Tay-Sachs. That's all my OBGYN tested for at that time. Fortunately, my husband and I were blessed with 2 perfectly healthy boys who are now 15 and 12 years old. I can't begin to imagine the heartache and the challenges that Jacob's family endured for nearly 20 years. If genetic screening had been available to Jacob's parents, if only they could have been educated on the options available to them so they could make informed decisions, learn about the challenges they may face and the risks involved, and ultimately gain knowledge to be best prepared to deal with these challenges. The Jewish Genetic Diseases Center of Greater Phoenix, Phoenix, exists to help Jewish individuals find peace of mind. We exist to enlighten young Jewish adults about the risks that they could face by carrying genetic mutations that they are probably completely unaware of. We help create awareness of these risks. We provide education to the community about screening and to our participants about the benefits of being screened. We strongly believe that knowledge is power. At our last testing event, we screened for 108 diseases. We may soon screen for over 180. We now, as we have through our history, screened Ashkenazi Jews, but now we are expanding to screen Sephardic Jews as well as non-Jewish partners. We also provide extensive genetic counseling, both before testing as well as after results are shared where necessary. We're providing education on BRCA, as you see today, and we are close to formalizing an alliance with the Phoenix Children's Hospital. This incredible work that we do is vital to this Jewish community. It will help to ensure healthy babies for many future generations. All of this work we do and the services that we provide would not be possible without your generous support. Your generous donations are essential for our future stability and success. We have donor cards available on the tables, and at this time, please feel free to take one and make a gift, and truly, any amount is appreciated. The Life and Legacy program that was mentioned earlier, and as the Life and Legacy chair, I would like to ask that you be open to hearing about making a Life and Legacy commitment. Thank you again to our Life and Legacy donors, and thank you all. Your gifts will truly secure our future. Thank you all for being here today. And Michelle is back.
Well, hello, everybody. I know we're running a little bit behind, so thank you for your patience, but the presentation was amazing, so thank you. And thank you to Susan and for everybody else for being here. We could not have done this without Jackie Brager and Rachel Heimnick. This has been amazing, and thank you to our committee and everybody else for putting this together.